Hi, I thought I would just share with you some recent takeaways that I've had from my own personal dry fire practice. And this has to do with evaluating whether I am putting unnecessary inputs or even like tension or direction into my draw stroke, particularly as I'm finishing the draw stroke, or sometimes referred to as mounting the pistol or presenting it to the target. So obviously this is not going to apply to every shooter, because depending on where you're at with your own personal skill level is going to determine the level of quality that you will get from something like this. But if you're someone that has practiced your draw and presentation to the target regularly, many thousands of times, then this is something you might find some value in. Now, let me start by explaining sort of where this comes from. One common thing I've seen a few people do, and I do this as well in my own personal practice, is occasionally to just test whether what I'm doing is working. I will pick a point or a target to look at, orient myself towards that, and then close my eyes and draw to the target. And then open my eyes and gauge a couple of things. I want to pay attention to, first of all, are my sights aligned? And can I see my sights? Now, whether it's iron sights or in this case a red dot, doesn't really matter. In the case of my red dot, I want to see that my dot's actually in the window somewhere. In the case of my iron sights, I want to see that my front sight is somewhere near the rear notch of the rear sight. So that's one thing I'll do. And then I'm looking at that, but also where are my sights oriented in relation to the intended target that I was looking at prior to closing my eyes. So if I do this again, I'm going to pay close attention. I'm looking at my target, a very specific point on that target, closing my eyes and drawing to it. Open my eyes. In this case, I'm about 1.5 inches high and really about 1.5 inches to the right. And this is a target that's on the wall about 10 feet away. Okay, that's pretty good. That's in the ballpark. And you're welcome to define for yourself what in the ballpark means for you. Typically, like if I'll put up a sticky note or something on the wall from anywhere from 7 to 12 feet away, if I can be somewhere on that sticky note, that's pretty darn good. Your own level of skill might be a little bit more, there might be greater variance than that or less, I don't know. Oh, I should mention, I am doing this with a unloaded and cleared pistol. Okay. All right. So again, what we're really testing here is our index. Okay, an index is something that's developed from repetition. We do this many thousands of times through practice, and it should be repeatable and consistent. Let's talk about a couple of things related to the draw really quick about what is going to affect the consistency of that index. First of all, when I'm drawing my pistol, especially from the appendix position, but it's true regardless of wherever you're coming from with the gun, we want to only move the parts of the body that are necessary to accomplish the job. So in this case, my gun is here. I'm only trying to get the gun from here to there, right? Mostly that's in a relatively lateral plane. In my draw stroke, there's a little bit of a curve to it, but it's more straight than it is like an L shape. Okay, so it's not coming up very deliberately and then out. It's sort of like this. If I do this from the side, you'll see, right? So it's kind of here and then out. Part of that is just the nature of needing to clear the holster in the first place. But as soon as it's clear and my hands begin to join on the gun, then we're out to the target. Okay, so I only want to move the parts of the body necessary to accomplish that job. In this case, primarily, we're going to see a lot of movement in articulation in the elbow joints, okay, because that's where most of the action's happening. Hands are going to the gun, hands are clearing garments, and so forth. We'll see a little bit of movement, obviously, in the shoulders, especially once we start going to the target, because those have to rotate. but we shouldn't be seeing a lot of movement up and down in the shoulders. We shouldn't be seeing movement in the head, side to side, twisting of the head, moving it up and down, that sort of thing. Okay, so ideally when we're drawing our pistol, we only want to move what needs to move. And in this case, primarily my hands. All right, so if I do it again, kind of in a slower, deliberate fashion, you'll see that I'm doing my absolute best to minimize movement everywhere else in the body except for my hands and mostly the four parts of my arms. So if we can do that, then our presentation to the target should be fairly consistent. Okay, and again, we still need some repetitions to really burn that in. Another thing is that we're going to find our natural point of aim is the easiest place to draw our pistol to and achieve consistency. Part of the reason for that is because, and let's define natural point of aim as I interpret it. And really what that is in my world is more of something that occurs on a horizontal plane as opposed to something vertical, because this is going to change depending on the elevation of a target. And there's not really a natural place out here that feels better than another. Obviously, what feels best is having the gun down because that takes the least effort. But anywhere out here is equally the same as far as I'm concerned. But when we're talking about how we're oriented towards a target on a horizontal plane relative to our body, there's going to be a place where there is the least amount of tension left or right. Okay, so a place where if I move slightly left, we start feeling some tension. We're going to feel it in the hips, in the legs, the knees, our upper body and torso. Okay, so I start moving this way. I feel some tension building up in the midsection of my body, my hips and my legs especially. Go to the right, same sort of thing. Okay, so somewhere in the middle of that is the place where there's the least amount of tension and the least amount of muscle strength required to maintain that orientation, and that's pretty much where your natural point of aim is going to be located. So with time and practice, you should figure out about where that's at, and then we can consistently position ourselves relative to a target so that when we draw, we're drawing within that. In this case, it's going to be like a vertical line, a vertical axis of sorts, where our natural point of aim exists and we have the least amount of tension. Okay, anytime we go outside of that, it's going to take a little bit more muscle engagement to actually achieve the other alignments outside of that. Now, you'll hear some other instructors like Scott Jedlinski, for instance, talking about his bind concept. And I won't get into the specifics of that, and there is a place for that, and it can absolutely work. And really we're just using where we start binding up in the body to as an advantage of sorts to keep us from overdriving the gun a particular direction, typically to our weak side of the body or the support side of the body. But that's neither here nor there as it relates to the purposes of this discussion today. So, again, periodically in dry fire practice, just to test myself, I'll pick a point, look at it intently, okay, and then it's a very specific point. So if I have like a piece of paper, put a little circle on it or something, a dot. If you're using a USPSA target, whether it's scaled one or not, use the actual letter A, even the tip of the letter A, the peak of it, on the A zone of the target. Something very specific. So I'm going to look at that very intently. When I'm satisfied, okay, I'm locked in, close my eyes, and while I am concentrating on minimizing movement in the body. Okay, here we go, draw. And even though I had my eyes closed for probably a good 10 seconds or so, I drew right up to that target, was perfectly even with it vertically, but horizontally was about 2 inches to the right. So very, very, very close. Within the ballpark, I'd consider that a pass. Okay, so that's a good thing, right? Now let's actually test this concept a little bit beyond the confines of my natural point of aim. So I'm going to orient my natural point of aim towards the camera now, and I'm going to pick a target here to my left and a target here to my right. And this is going to test things a little bit further. This is more about whether my body is able to move towards where my eye directs it, okay? And it's going to require a little bit more muscle engagement and tension because now I'm going outside of my natural point of aim. Now I'm still within what would be considered my cone of fire, and I'm not going to get into that concept too much today, but you know, there's a limit where we can comfortably shoot and maintain good control on the gun. I'm within that cone of fire. I'm just not aligned with my natural point of aim. So I'm looking here at my first target that I used. In this case, my head's actually turned, but my body is directed this way. Head is there, looking intently on my target, and close my eyes, draw. And here, in this case, I'll describe to you very specifically. The dot in my optic window was towards the top of the window, but still within the window. It was perfectly in alignment horizontally, but about 1.25 inches, 1.5 inches high above a very specific point on the target that I was focused on. That's really good. That's really excellent. So that's a great test. Okay, so now I'm going to do this and look over at this target now. Okay, so here we go. On this target, close my eyes, draw. Similar result. For whatever reason, again, my dot is elevated in the window itself. It's right towards the top edge, but we were about 1.5 inches left and about 1 inch high relative to my intended aim point. Again, I'd still consider that to be a pass. Now, typically what we're going to see when we go to the left or go to the right, we're going to see results a lot of times biased towards the side that our natural point of aim is on. So I'm going to the left. Well, it requires more effort and muscle engagement and physical exertion to get there. So we're going to tend to fall short, and that's going to be towards the middle or our natural point of aim. Again, this is a test to see if my body follows where my eyes direct, and it's a good thing to test. So where am I going with all of this? What I really am wanting to talk with you about today is a realization that I had recently as I was testing myself in this regard, testing my index by closing my eyes and presenting to a target, then going back to looking with my eyes open at a target and drawing to it, I started noticing that my results with my eyes closed were better than when my eyes were open. Curious indeed. What I believe is occurring is that because my eyes are open, there is something subconscious taking place there, that as the gun is going to the target, I am subconsciously trying to guide it. And it's I think subconscious is the right way to think of it, because I'm not thinking about doing it, it's just happening. At the same time, there is some active guidance taking place. So before, when I close my eyes, dead on, right on my intended point of aim. When I close my eyes, I get better results a lot of times than when my eyes are open. Well, the only thing that could be happening is that when my eyes are closed, I'm a lot more in tune with my body positioning, the kinesthetics of everything that's involved, the sensations that I'm experiencing, all of that. And I'm literally thinking, as I'm looking at the target, I'm closing my eyes and I'm trying to, even though my eyes are closed, still keep my eyes directed at that point where they were looking just a moment ago. Okay? And I'm focused on trying to keep everything else very still, and also trying to only move that which needs to move to get the gun to the target. Again, almost dead on. I'm about 3/4 of an inch high and 1 inch to the right. Very, very, very close. So when my eyes are closed, I'm a little bit more in tune with the sensation, kinesthetic experience of drawing the gun and relying on the index. I'm a little bit more relaxed, and I want to be careful using the word relaxed, because sometimes people hear relaxed and they relax themselves maybe too much, or they relax themselves in the wrong ways as it relates. Like for instance, we don't want to relax our grip. Our grip should always be engaged. We should be gripping very, very firmly, especially with our support hand. But as it relates to this idea of relying on my index and drawing to a point on the wall there with my eyes closed, well, I am not actively guiding the gun. I'm purely relying on the index. Okay, so when my eyes are open, let's do it over here. Eyes are open, I draw, and here I was fairly close, but my dot ended up on the left upper edge of my window and 3 inches left and 3 inches high. Let's do that with my eyes closed. 1 inch low, or 1 inch left, 1 1/4, 1.5 inches low. Better result, my eyes closed. Okay, so the realization I had is that something subconsciously is interfering with that process. So, how am I working on correcting this in my draw? And by the way, this is something I've been working on because the last time I shot Scott Jedlinski's Modern Samurai Project Black Belt Standards, I missed the draw to first shot. Sent the shot just a little bit to the right, if I recall correctly. And I mean, I practice a lot of draws. I do a lot of shooting at 7 yards, bill drills, 1-shot draws. My own standards has a draw and firing 2 shots. That's what I consider my draw standard. That's something I do a lot. And it's a little bit frustrating for me as much time as I spend on it to then, when it counts, go to perform and send a shot not where I intended for it to be. So I figured it's got to be something that's guiding the gun, and I'm creating additional tension or muscle engagement or effort or something somewhere along the way that is causing me to get off target rather than just letting it happen. So how I'm working on this is I'm looking at my target. I'm going to go ahead and close my eyes, and I'm going to try to get really in tune with my body and everything that I'm feeling and experiencing throughout this. And I know this sounds funny because we're talking about this sort of like touchy-feely sort of shooting stuff, but seriously, guys, like this really works. So I'm closing my eyes, trying to maintain everything just as static as I can. Okay, one more time. I'm going to index. Here we go. Draw. Perfectly in alignment on a horizontal plane. I am about 1 3/4 inches low. Still considered a pass. Okay, so what I would do here is I would close my eyes, do the draw, open my eyes, check, looks good, then go back to the holster and repeat almost immediately, trying to maintain that same mindset and attitude while I'm looking at the target. Okay, and I'll go back and forth. Eyes closed, test myself. Almost perfect. Dot was a little bit elevated in the window. Now eyes open, try to duplicate that. Oh, I drew right to the target that time. Eyes closed. This time actually a little bit off my eyes closed. About a little, just a tad low up and down, but actually almost 3 inches to the left. Let's just try that again. That was definitely my worst one yet. That one was much better. 1 1/4 inches low, 1/2 inch to the left. Maintain that same mental attitude and kind of sensation, if you will. In other words, I'm not trying to interfere with the draw stroke. That one was better. Now I'm just going to keep my eyes open. A little bit off, but more centered than I have been in the past, just a little bit higher than I wanted it to be. Again, perfect. Okay, so to begin summarizing this video, some of the main takeaways from all of this are that once you have already established yourself in terms of having a good, consistent, repeatable index and a clean, efficient draw, there is still the potential there for you to get in your own way of just allowing that to take place or allowing it to happen. If you read any of Brian Enos's words, such as like what you find in his Practical Shooting book, he talks a lot about being an observer to the process, sort of like you are just mentally and visually along for the ride as you watch the process take place in front of your eyes. And a real big key of that is that you're just letting it occur. You're letting it happen. You've already developed the automatic mental processes to be able to do that thing repeatedly and consistently. And so what I think is happening, at least for me, is that there are times where I'm putting a little bit of subconscious effort into trying to make a certain end result occur without realizing it a lot of times. So I'm staring at that target and I'm thinking, oh man, I want that dot to be right there, right at that specific time so I can send that shot and get that sub-second draw. And somewhere along the way, we are putting in a little bit more effort than is needed. We are unnecessarily driving or guiding the gun, when instead we just need to trust the process and trust in ourselves to realize that, hey, I know that if I just intently visually focus on that point of the target and then conduct the movement with my gun that I've already done thousands or tens of thousands of times, my dot or my sights are going to end up on the target. And so all I need to be concerned with is observing when that takes place, and when my sights end up where I want them to be, we send the shot. It's as simple as that. So I hope this video has been helpful for you. I would encourage you to experiment with this and see if you can recognize and discover within yourself your own limitations that you are creating for yourself subconsciously without recognizing or without knowing it, except for you go through this process. So thanks for watching the video. I appreciate your support. If you want to check out the other stuff I'm up to, or check out my schedule in terms of training or online video coaching, go ahead and head on over to learntrainshoot.com. Thanks so much.